I'm Tei Shi. This is Bobby. We're going to be playing some songs for you today. Thank you for having us in. This is really cool. Your office is kind of insane in the best way possible. All right, we're going to start with a song called Keep Running.
Every time I look over my shoulder, I'm getting older, I'm getting older. Every time I look over my shoulder, I'm getting older, I'm getting older. Time is so sad. Tell me to end. Strapped to my side. Never look back. Baby, keep running for me. Chasing the things that you see in your sleep. Baby, keep running for me. Don't hesitate, don't make me wait. If you want my loving, then you better start running. If you want my loving, then you better start running. If you want my loving, then you better start. Every time I look over my shoulder, I'm getting older, I'm getting older. Time is so sad. Tell me to end. Strapped to my side. Never look back. Baby, keep running for me. If you keep on running, if you keep on running, chasing the things that you see in your sleigh. If you're chasing things, if you're chasing things, baby, keep running for me. If you keep on running, if you keep on running, don't hesitate, don't make me wait. If you want my loving, if you want my loving, baby, keep running for me. If you keep on running, if you keep on running for me. If you're chasing things, if you're chasing things in your sleep. If you keep on running, if you keep on running, don't hesitate, don't make me wait. If you want my loving, then you better start running. If you want my loving, then you better start running. If you want my loving, then you better start running.
It's awesome to be here. We played a show last night as part of Noise Pop, which is going on, I think, all week in the city. And I love the city. It's really great to play here. So I'm glad we were able to come in today and play for you guys. Thank you for being here. We're going to do another song now.
Even though I'm trying up on patience, you could dive and swim inside our memories. Everything is alright. Oh my. If you're in there, just know that I'm not scared. I'll take you by the shoulder, squeeze them tight and shake you till I wake you. Hey, you, to lose you is something I refuse to do. If everything's a choice in life, just like they say, well then I choose you. Dun, dun, pull me close, and we can dance with the violence. Let me know. I wanna go down in silence, silence. And we can dance with the violence. Let me know. I'll go down in silence, silence, baby. Whoa, baby. Whoa, baby. You know I'm the same me, baby.
That song is called Baby. Thank you. I think we're doing some interview stuff.
Few questions for you. Once again, thank you for being here. I think if we could give another round of applause. So these are songs off your new album that came out about a year ago.
Yeah.
And you just finished a tour. You came to San Francisco just to do noise pop, which is completely awesome. But what was the progression to make this album, which is Crawl Space?
Yeah. So all these songs that we're playing today are off my debut album, which came out, almost a year ago. And the album was kind of a culmination of a couple of years of writing. I'd put out 2 EPs before the album, and that's kind of how I started out. I put out an EP of songs I had written when I was at music school, and just kind of threw them online and kind of got into that online blog world as it was, I think, kind of at its end. And then I made a second EP and just kind of started playing live and really getting used to this whole performance and actually putting music out for other people to hear. And so the album was kind of, it's 12 songs, and I spent about 1.5 to 2 years writing it right after the second EP came out. And it's really just kind of the emotional journey, I think, of going from putting my music out there and starting from a very naive place and a very kind of just DIY place, and then kind of being thrown very quickly into that experience of having other people, listening and judging, and other people's opinions, and kind of getting used to the music industry and working with other people, and just a lot of my ups and downs through that process. And so the album kind of deals with all of those emotions, and also, a breakup that happened around the time I was finishing the album. And so there's some love songs, and there's just a lot of kind of self-reflection on it, and a mix of a lot of different sounds and genres that I listen to. I like to listen to all kinds of different music, so it's pretty eclectic. This is kind of a very different arrangement of the songs, just the guitar and vocals, but if you listen to the recordings, they're much more built out.
Yeah, it's a great album. I don't know why I'm bending over so much. No, it's a great album, and Crawl Space actually has to do with that coming out in there and finding like that safe space,
Yeah.
as you said?
Yeah, I mean, the album title Crawl Space was kind of inspired by, a couple of things. It's kind of symbolically like, a crawl space is kind of like this very small place in your house that's cramped and not a very nice space to be in, but kind of, I think, emotionally that idea of a really small, cramped space was kind of how I felt when I was working on the album and dealing with some kind of relationships around me kind of crumbling and just really having to like reassess my life and my surroundings as I was actually making music my career, and all the difficulties that come with that, and the crawl space also has like a double meaning for me, because when I was really little, my family moved from Colombia to Canada when I was about 8, and we moved into a house for the first time, and it had this crawl space in it, which I'd never known what that was before, but I was really afraid of it, and I had a really hard time at night, like a lot of kind of anxiety in the nighttime and insomnia, and so I developed this ritual of like forcing myself to sit in the crawl space for a minute every night just to kind of confront my fears. And then over the course of the first year of being there, I kind of got over those night fears and those that fear. And so that was kind of a lesson to myself. Like I kind of learned to confront my anxieties and my fears, like really just head on to deal with them. And making the album was very much a process of that. Like I was really kind of afraid of this daunting idea of putting out an album and really like presenting myself as an artist to people. And so the album was a process of like dealing with those fears and those insecurities and coming out on the other end, feeling really proud and confident about it.
I gotta ask then, is the tarantula real that's on your face?
Yeah.
It's a real tarantula?
Yeah, so the album cover and like all the artwork on the album is, it's my face with a tarantula on it. And that was another fear of mine, as I'm sure most of you can relate. I just thought it was a really kind of, first of all, like a cool visual, because the album title Crawl Space, I wanted to play off of that very like visceral, like kind of creepy, like, the word crawl, and so I thought of a tarantula, which really scared me at first, but I always like a challenge, and I thought the visual would be really amazing, and there were some images that I was inspired by, like there's this Michael Jackson Time cover where he has a tarantula on his face, and so I like saw that, and I was just like, yes, this is the look that I want. But it was a real tarantula.
All right, yeah. I could understand that'd be scary.
Yes.
So you mentioned you moved from Colombia, but you were born in Buenos Aires, lived in Colombia, moved to Canada. You also said, and I was talking about this earlier, about the Shakira thing, where you mentioned about one of your favorite albums growing up was Shakira's second CD. I always forget its name because it's...
Yeah. Well, there were a couple of her early CDs.
That you really liked. And when you describe them, you say it was like an early Alanis Morissette, which I thought was a very Canadian thing to say. But since then, you like moved, then you lived in New York, and now you're in LA. Like being in all these areas, how has that really changed your sound and influenced like what you're doing today?
I mean, I think like changing your surroundings and your environment is like the main thing, at least for me. I think the main thing you can do to really just keep yourself like stimulated and like discovering who you are and like what things stay constant when you change everything around you, and what things you can, what things about you are really adaptable. And I think that that's something really important to do creatively. In music, for sure, I think experiencing different cultures, different languages, different genres of music, different ways of making music, ways of performing. So for me, like now, being able to travel and moving around at this point is really important. And it's just something I grew up doing as well. I was born in Argentina. My parents are Colombian, and when I was 2, we moved back to Colombia and lived there until I was 8, and then went to Canada. And since then, I kind of grew up like in between Colombia and Canada. So I feel very much Colombian and very much Canadian. And I think that's just kind of part of my identity, just like feeling very multifaceted, I guess, in my background. And that's the way I like to approach music too.
So it when you say like you started off in putting your music out there, I noticed that a lot of your early shows were like big festivals like Coachella, and with some pretty cool bands like Jungle, who is amazing and all that stuff. And now you're going on your own tours. Like, how's that? Like, knowing that people now are here solely to see you.
Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty weird experience. Like, I started playing live really just as like a tool to help get my music out there. And then I was really lucky with my second EP to be able to tour quite a bit off of that and do festivals and support some really awesome bands and artists. So that kind of got me just, I guess, into the idea of, standing in front of people and being able to gauge also like what things connect with people in a live environment. And festivals are very different from like venue shows, and club shows are different. So like, all of these situations are, they require, I think, experience just to know what to bring to the table and what kind of set to build around the songs. And so by the time I made the album and, did the tour around the album, I was able to kind of have a better sense of what that's like and know what I wanted the show to be like and how I wanted, the audience to feel. And but it's a pretty surreal thing. Like, I mean, we did a really long 2-month tour in the fall. It ended in the end of October, and we toured quite a bit like throughout last year. So this show we did last night was the first show we played in months, and it's really kind of crazy to just come to San Francisco and play a show and like, see that there's a bunch of people there and they know the songs. Like, that is the thing that just never fully clicks. Like, the idea that what you're making and putting out there is actually something that people are connecting with and that they want to come see. I always feel before a show like no one's gonna show up, and I just don't understand like how, like, why this happens. But it's really amazing. It's like just it's so much fun, and it's really fulfilling, especially cities like San Francisco where the energy is always really great.
Well, the first song I heard of yours was off of one of your EPs, and we talked. It's a song which everyone should look up. It's a little racy, but it's Sick as Fuck. It's a great song. And then you come out with songs like Keep On Running, which is beautiful. And I've seen many different acoustic versions you've done of it, which has just been crazy, like, vocals. What's next? Like, you just finished this album, it's year passed. Are you working on new stuff?
Yeah,
where are you going?
I actually just moved over to the West Coast, so now I'm a Californian, just like you guys.
LA, though.
You gotta blow my cover like that. So I'm kind of, I'm working on new music, and we're continuing to play the album and continuing to get that out there, but trying to just write some new music and figure out what the next project will be, and just collaborate with different people. And that's kind of the next. I'm hoping to get some new music out soon, and just keep people interested.
Where do you go to find this inspiration? Are you a movie watcher? Do you go to a whole bunch of shows yourself? Do you just like to wander in the woods?
I think it's like a combination of a lot of things. I mean, I think like in anything, in anything anybody does, you pick up little bits of influence or inspiration from very subtle things, like just as you live your life. So, I love movies. I mean, I love like visuals. So I like to watch a lot of movies. I like to see shows and like theater and just see different forms of performance. That's really inspiring for me. And then, obviously listening to music and just listening to music from other parts of the world and like what people are making outside of the bubble of, LA, New York. I mean, people inspire me, and I think, like I said, the main thing is just kind of having new experiences and changing my environment. So moving out to this coast, I think, will be a very different experience, different kind of inspiration than you get in New York. And so I'm looking forward to that and to see how that influences the sound.
Well, besides Crawl Space, which is amazing, what album should we listen to that you right now you can't stop listening to?
That's a tough one. I always forget everything when people ask me about what music I'm listening to.
It's okay to say Crawl Space.
Let's see what I've been listening to. You know, I think, and I feel like I've said this when people ask me this question a lot over the past year, but there's this album by, he's Canadian actually, Andy Schauf is his name, and he's like multi-instrumentalist, singer, songwriter, like produces and engineers everything he does. He's one of those like just completely does everything himself, and his album called The Party, it's like a concept album about, basically it takes you through this party that he goes to, and it kind of he sings the songs from different perspectives of the people attending the party, and it's really good. It's like really great music. He's amazing, and I think he's gonna really blow up, so you should check out that album.
Besides us coaxing you to come back and perform at Google, when do you have a time when you're going to be around again, like touring, or is that too far in the future? Or the best way to find you besides going to LA?
Yeah. I mean, touring is always kind of happening. It's always kind of just like in flux, like depending on what comes up. Right now, it's not like a super touring heavy time, just because I'm just writing new material. But yeah, I mean, we'll be, doing stuff probably more in the end of the summer and the early fall. And you can always keep up with what's going on like my socials and stuff. I always post about shows and all that stuff. So definitely, I'm sure we'll be back in this area soon.
Well, that'd be great. Do you mind if we open up to some questions, if anybody has anything that they're dying to ask? Not even dying. No one came prepared?
Yeah, I got.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
So I was going to say, little Sofa there is repping Vancouver and Edmonton.
Oh, amazing.
My parents also moved us to Vancouver when I was 8, so I understand this multi-identity you're talking about. So I have 2 questions. The first one was, to me, the power of collaboration is about bringing something forward that can be transmuted or transformed when other people, add a perspective to it. Mm-hmm. But as a singer and a songwriter, when you've got a vision for something, when you bring it forward to other people, how do you manage that collaboration? How do you, disagree productively if people are taking it in a direction that isn't what you had wanted? And the second question I had was, so one of the songs on Crawl Space that I've been listening to on repeat is Creep. And, I think you've made so many interesting choices with like the distorted guitars and all of this stuff. So how do you retain that vision when you're doing a smaller, not electronic set?
Ooh, okay. That's a really good question. I think, so for the first part, like collaboration is something that is completely dependent on the people that are involved, and the dynamic and the process is always different. But I think like with writing and making music, making something new with someone, it's very kind of easy to gauge, like when you first are in a room with someone and trying to do something, kind of where that's going to go, and whether, whether your vision or your opinion is something that they're going to kind of help bring to life, or whether they're bringing their own thing and they're kind of just like shutting your ideas out. So I think the first phase is always kind of figuring out whether it's really the dynamic works. And then from that point, I mean, it really just depends on the people involved. A lot of the times I like to bring like a song idea to someone and kind of have like the bones of the song, like the melodies and the vocals and the lyrics, and kind of just, the song written somewhat, and then build on that. And usually for me, like the way I like to work is to kind of show whoever I'm working with what I've been inspired by lately and like what I'm listening to, and kind of just give them like a taste of, I guess, my like mood board, let's say, of like what I'm into and what I want to kind of bring into this song, what I want to reference. And usually we'll just like listen to a bunch of stuff and go back and forth, and then it kind of just happens really naturally. But I think it's just about finding the right person who like understands who you are and understands where you're coming from and like your background, and then who is willing to like explore with you, but also let you kind of lead the way as well. That's, I think, for me, the best way that collaboration can work. And then your second question, which I'm now like blanking on. Oh yeah. Yeah. It's tough. It's tough translating, like, especially because with recorded music, you spend so much time creating something. And like, you know, this album I worked on throughout like a pretty drawn out period of time. And so the songs over time became these very like solidified things that were like, to me, their own worlds that I didn't really want to step outside of. So on the one hand, making the live show, like, you know, we have a full live band that we play the show with, so we're able to really kind of stay true to the recordings, but give them that, you know, live played element. But when it comes to really stripping things down like this, actually, I haven't done a ton of it, and we've kind of just been figuring it out as we go with this album. But I think it's really about letting, like, the songwriting, like letting the melody and the vocal kind of sit, you know, where it sits, in a way that you can identify. Like, it feels like the same song, but also arranging it in a way, you know, with the guitar, like giving it a different feel, giving it, you know, some like changing some of the chords, or kind of just like giving the song a different feeling and a different pace, but letting like the vocal kind of carry the song the way you know it. And yeah, I mean, it's fun. I mean, it's kind of hard to it's hard to actually attempt to like translate like everything that's going on in a recording with this, but I think this experience has actually kind of informed my songwriting now too. Like, I think about that a little bit more now when I'm writing new material. Like, how is this going to translate if it's just a guitar and vocal? And it's made me kind of focus more on the songwriting and really making a song that it feels like it can stand on its own with just a guitar and doesn't really need all of that production to feel like it has an identity. Yeah. Thanks.
Anybody else coming up? Yeah.
I'm usually on the other side, so I hope the sound is acceptable. Tei Shi, I'm assuming it's a derivative of your last name.
Yeah.
Is there any special story behind it? Is it a nickname or?
Not really. It's kind of just like an abstract take on my last name, and yeah, it just kind of like popped into my head and it stuck. Yeah, there's no like big meaning behind it.
Choosing a name is one of the hardest things to do.
Yeah, exactly. I think you just kind of have to like throw something
Right.
at the wall and like just let it. Yeah. Yeah, sorry, there's no good story behind that.
Well, I have a question about the story behind the child on crawl space, the person who comes in there. Is that you? And if not, those are recordings of you.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Did you feel embarrassed to put in the part about how you wanted to be Britney Spears? Because it's totally valid. I understand.
I mean, so throughout the album, there's like these little snippets of tape recordings. So like kind of around that same time I talked about when we moved to Canada, I started learning how to record myself on a cassette tape, just on a boombox. My sister passed down to me, and she kind of showed me how I could record myself. And so I would just sing and make up songs and also just kind of talk to myself. It became kind of like a diary type thing. And so I had these tape cassettes sitting around forever, and I found them when I was working on the album. And so I integrated some parts of them into the album. And yeah, so that's me just kind of talking to myself. For the most part, like, I mean, at that point, I really dreamed of being a singer and a performer, but I was very young, and the idea I had of being a singer was like Britney Spears. Like, that was kind of like the female performer, singer when I was young that, you know, I was looking to. So there was a lot of me talking about Britney Spears and how I wanted to be a singer really badly, but then also kind of really kind of beating myself up about how I wasn't good enough and I had to be better. And it was just funny to me to listen back on those and see that I was like going through these very like ups and downs and these insecurities, but also these big ambitions that I think I can still really relate to at this point in my life. And yeah, so they resonated with me, especially at the time when I was making the album and just kind of dealing with like this, you know, this weird idea of putting myself completely out there and wanting to be better.
So could we assume then that somewhere out there are recordings of you singing Britney Spears?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of that. I mean, I didn't include any of the parts where I was singing, but yeah, the parts on the album are just like spoken parts. But yeah, there's a lot of Britney Spears, Mariah Carey, like all that stuff.
So you have one song and only one that's in all Spanish, and was that putting? I mean, you know, a lot of music in the United States is only in English for the vast majority. I mean, there are a good following for other forms, but was there any question about doing that song, or should I have that in there, or was that something like, this song is great, I need to put it in there, I want to represent this?
Yeah, I mean, I never really thought about it as like oh, this is in Spanish and that's a thing. Like I'd written that song and I'd had that song floating around. Actually, I think that's probably one of the first songs I wrote that ended up on the album, and I had it floating around for a long time, and I wanted to do something with it, and as I worked on it and finished it, I really loved it, and I thought it presented, like, it fit into the sound of the album, but it also presented another side that's a little more organic sounding, like there's more kind of live instrumentation on it, and also, I mean my, you know, Spanish, like, my Latin background is a really big part of who I am, and I always wanted to, you know, write and release more music in Spanish. I just like was kind of waiting to, you know, write something that I wanted to put out, and that just happened to be that. But yeah, I mean, I never really thought about it too much. It just kind of, once I decided it was going to be on the album, it was on the album. And I think I've really enjoyed being able to sing in Spanish and like also have people that come to the shows who speak Spanish like sing along, and you know, they really love that song because they can relate to it in a different way. And I'll definitely be putting out more music in Spanish from, you know, that kind of like opened the doors, I think.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I think you have one more song for us.
Yeah, we're actually going to play that song.
Oh, lucky me.
So thank you for presenting.
Okay. Well, with that.
So this song is called Como Si.
Pasan los días y pesan las noches. Pasan los días y pesan las noches, como si fueras mis padres. Déjame ir, suéltame al mundo y deja como si fueras mi mente. Sepárate bien de mi cuerpo así de repente y de mis hábitos también. Que la piel se desabroche de tu día y noche, que se zafe sin que corte para que sea así. Pasan los días y pesan las noches. Pasan los días. Ese amor que te enfurece, que me endurece, deja que el tiempo obedece, como si fuera así, y que la piel se desabroche de tu día y noche, que se zafe sin que corte para que sea así. Pasan los días y pesan las noches. 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 Thank you so much.
Once again, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Tei Shi.
Thank you. Thanks
And
for
also-
coming.
Want to also mention Bobby on the guitar.